My name is Marcus Thompson, and I've built an empire from nothing. At 38, I own 3 successful tech companies, a penthouse overlooking Central Park, and everything money can buy. But as I stood in the doorway of what was supposed to be our nursery, painted yellow because we never knew if it would be a boy or girl, I felt like the poorest man alive. My wife Sarah sat on the window seat, staring out at the city waking up below. The morning light caught the tears she thought I couldn't. See, we'd been trying for 8 years. 8 years of hope, disappointment, treatments, and heartbreak. The doctor's words still echoed. I'm sorry, but with Sarah's condition, pregnancy isn't possible. Marcus, she whispered without turning around. I had the dream again. The one where we're pushing a swing in the park, and there's this little voice calling us Mom and Dad. I walked over and wrapped my arms around her. Through the window I could see families walking their kids to school, strollers being pushed through the crosswalks, children laughing in the playground across the street. Every day life reminded us of what we couldn't have. What if we're looking at this wrong? I said, the words surprising even me. What if there's a child out there who needs us as much as we need them? Sarah turned in my arms, her green eyes searching mine. You mean adoption? I mean opening our hearts to a child who's already here, already waiting. I touched her face. Gently. We have so much love to give, Sarah. Maybe it's time we shared it. That afternoon, I made a call that would change everything. The New York Department of Children's Services connected me to Maria Rodriguez, a social worker who had seen it all in her 15 years on the job. Mr. Thompson, she said during our first meeting in her crowded office in downtown Manhattan, adoption isn't about rescuing a child. It's about building a family. Are you and your wife prepared for that journey? As we left that meeting with a folder full of paperwork and our first glimpse into the adoption process, I realized our real story was just beginning. The fluorescent lights in the Administration for Children's Services building felt harsh against my eyes as Sarah and I sat through our third orientation session. Around us, other hopeful parents took notes, asked questions, and shared the same mixture of hope and anxiety that had become our constant companion. The average wait time for infant adoption can be several years, the caseworker explained. However, there are many older children in foster care who are ready for permanent families right now. Sarah squeezed my hand. We'd already discussed this. While everyone seemed to want babies, there were kids, real kids with personalities, dreams and stories, who just needed someone to believe in them. We'd like to learn more about the older children, I said, and I saw Maria Rodriguez nod approvingly from across the room. After the session, Maria approached us. Walk with me, she said, leading us down a corridor lined with children's artwork. I've been doing this job for 15 years, and I can usually tell which families are serious about older child adoption. You two, you have something different in your eyes. She stopped in front of a bulletin board covered with photos and brief descriptions. These are some of our kids who are waiting. They're not babies, but they're children who dream of having a family to call their own. My eyes scanned the faces. Kids of all ages, races, some smiling, some serious, all hoping. Then I saw her. The photo showed a girl with intelligent dark eyes and neat braids, wearing what looked like a school uniform. The description read, Keisha, age 12, loves reading, math, and helping others. Looking for a family who will support her dreams of becoming a doctor. Tell us about Keisha, Sarah said softly, and I realized she'd been drawn to the same photo. Maria's expression grew both sad and hopeful. Keisha Williams. She's been in the system for 3 years since her grandmother passed away. She's incredibly bright, honor roll student, volunteers at the community center. But she's been in 4 different foster homes. Not because she's difficult, but because... Maria paused. Because people expect gratitude instead of offering patience. She's old enough to remember her grandmother. Old enough to feel the loss, deeply. Where is she now? I asked. A group home in Brooklyn. She shares a room with 3 other girls, studies by flashlight after lights out, and still maintains straight A's. Maria looked at us carefully. She's been disappointed before. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, if you meet her, it has to be real. She can't handle another family deciding she's too much work. That night, Sarah and I sat at our kitchen island, Keisha's photo between us. The city sparkled outside our floor-to-ceiling windows, but all I could think about was a 12-year-old girl studying by flashlight. She wants to be a doctor, Sarah said, tracing the edge of the photo with her finger. Just like you wanted to be at her age, I replied. Sarah had given up her dream of medical school to support my first startup. Another sacrifice in a marriage full of them. Marcus, what if we can't give her what she needs? What if we disappoint her too? I took Sarah's hands in mine. Then we'll figure it out together. But what if we can give her everything she needs? What if she's the daughter we've been waiting for? 3 days later, we submitted our application to meet Keisha Williams. The community center in Brooklyn was nothing like our usual Manhattan haunts. The walls needed paint, the floors were worn linoleum, but it buzzed with life. Kids played basketball in the gym, teenagers clustered around computers, and the smell of home-cooked food drifted from what must have been a kitchen. She volunteers here every Saturday, Maria explained as we walked through the hallways. Helps with the younger kids' homework program. My heart pounded as we approached a room where I could hear children's voices mixing with patient explanations. Through the doorway, I saw her. Keisha sat at a small table with 2 kids who couldn't have been more than 7, helping them with math problems. She was smaller than I'd imagined, but there was something about the way she carried herself, a dignity, a strength that seemed beyond her 12 years. See, if you have 5 apples and you give away 2, she was saying, using actual apple slices as props, how many do you have left? One of the kids, a little boy with a gap-toothed grin, counted carefully. 3. Exactly. You're so smart, David. Now you try one, Mama, she said to a little girl who beamed at the nickname. Keisha, Maria called gently. I'd like you to meet some people. She looked up, and I saw her entire demeanor shift. The warmth in her eyes cooled to wariness, her shoulders squared defensively. She'd been through this before. These are Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, Maria continued. They've been hoping to meet you. Keisha stood politely, but I could see her building walls in real time. Hello, she said formally, extending a small hand for a handshake. No smile, no enthusiasm, just careful politeness. Sarah knelt down to be at eye level. Hi, Keisha. Maria told us you want to be a doctor. I wanted to be one too when I was your age. A flicker of interest crossed Keisha's face before she caught herself. Why didn't you? Sarah smiled. Life took me in a different direction, but I never stopped loving science. Do you have a favorite subject in school? Biology, Keisha said, and I heard the first note of genuine enthusiasm in her voice. We're studying the human heart right now. Did you know it beats about 100,000 times a day? I didn't know that, I said, genuinely impressed. That's incredible. She glanced at me, sized me up quickly. Most people think it's boring. Most people probably can't handle how smart you are, I replied honestly. For the first time, she almost smiled. Almost. We spent an hour at the community center. I watched Keisha help kids with homework, organize supplies, and gently mediate a dispute between 2 8-year-olds fighting over crayons. She was nurturing, responsible, and clearly adored by the younger children. But with us, she remained polite and distant. As we prepared to leave, she walked us to the door. Are you rich? She asked suddenly, looking directly at me. The question caught me off guard. I'm comfortable, I said carefully. The last family was rich too. They wanted me to be grateful all the time, like I owed them something for having money. Her voice was matter of fact, but I heard the hurt underneath. I knelt down to her level. Keisha, can I tell you something? I grew up poor, really poor. I know what it's like to feel like you have to earn love, to feel like you owe people for basic kindness. If we become a family, you won't owe us anything. Ever. She studied my face for a long moment. What do you want from me then? Sarah joined us, her voice gentle. We want to get to know you. We want to support your dreams. And maybe, if we all feel good about it, we want to be your family. Keisha nodded slowly. Okay, but I have rules. What kind of rules? I asked. I don't do fake hugs. I don't pretend to be happy when I'm not. And I'm not going to call you Mom. And Dad unless I mean it. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. Those sound like very reasonable rules. As we drove back to Manhattan, Sarah was quiet. She's been hurt, she finally said. She's been let down by adults who were supposed to protect her, I corrected. But did you see her with those kids? She has so much love to give. Do you think we can do this, Marcus? Really do this? I thought about Keisha's careful politeness, her defensive walls, and the brief moments when her true self shone through. I think she's exactly who we've been waiting for. The question is whether we're who she's been waiting for. The next 6 weeks became a careful dance of getting to know each other. The state required supervised visits, gradual increases in time spent together, and constant evaluation. But more than that, Keisha was conducting her own evaluation of us. Our second visit was at the Museum of Natural History. I thought she'd love the dinosaurs or the planetarium, but she spent 2 hours in the Hall of Human Origins, asking questions that impressed even the museum guides. So humans and apes share like 99% of DNA? She asked, studying a display about genetic similarities. That's right, the guide confirmed. We're more alike than different. Keisha glanced at me meaningfully. I was beginning to understand that everything was a test with her. Not manipulative tests, but the natural wariness of a child who'd learned to read adults for signs of authenticity. Just like people, she said quietly. We're more alike than different, even when we look different. Sarah caught my eye over Keisha's head. This kid was deep. By our fourth visit, Keisha agreed to come to our apartment for dinner. She was quiet as we rode the elevator to the penthouse, her eyes taking in everything but her expression revealing nothing. Wow, she said simply when she saw the view of Central Park. Do you like it? Sarah asked. Keisha considered the question seriously. It's beautiful, but it's really high up. Do you ever feel disconnected from everything down there? The question hit me harder than I expected. Sometimes, I admitted. Do you think living up high makes you disconnected? I don't know yet, she said honestly. I guess it depends on whether you remember what it's like down there. That evening, Sarah cooked Keisha's favorite meal, spaghetti and meatballs, while I helped with homework at our kitchen island. She was working on a science project about the circulatory system. This is really good, I said, reviewing her detailed diagrams. Your teacher is going to be impressed. My foster mom says I spend too much time on homework, Keisha said, not looking up from her drawing. She says I'm trying to be better than everyone else. Sarah and I exchanged glances. What do you think? Sarah asked carefully. Keisha shrugged. I think I'm trying to be good enough to deserve better. The honesty of it broke my heart. Keisha, you already deserve better. You deserve everything good, just because you exist. She looked up at me skeptically. That's not how the world works. It's how families work, I said, or how they should work. Over dinner, we learned more about her life. She told us about her grandmother, who'd raised her from birth after her teenage mother couldn't cope. Grandma always said I was going to change the world, Keisha said, twirling spaghetti around her fork. She said I had healing hands, even when I was little. When she got sick, I tried to take care of her, but you were just a little girl, Sarah said gently. Taking care of a sick adult wasn't your job. I know that now. But I felt like I failed her. After dinner, we sat in the living room, and Keisha asked to see photos of our families. Sarah showed her pictures of her parents who lived in California, and I shared stories about growing up in Detroit with my single mom. Your mom looks nice, Keisha said, studying a photo of my mother at her retirement party. Does she know about me? She knows we're hoping to adopt, I said. She's very excited about the possibility of having a granddaughter. What if she doesn't like me? Impossible, Sarah said firmly. But even if that were the case, it wouldn't matter. We're choosing you, Keisha, not anyone else. As Maria drove Keisha back to the group home that night, she seemed thoughtful. They're different from the others, she told Maria, not knowing we could hear through the open window. Different how? Maria asked. They listened to my actual words, not just waiting for their turn to talk. and they don't try to make me smile when I don't feel like smiling. The next week, Keisha asked if she could cook dinner for us at our apartment. She wanted to make her grandmother's recipe for cornbread and fried chicken. "Grandma taught me when I was 10, she explained as we shopped for groceries together. She said every person should know how to feed the people they love. That evening, as our kitchen filled with the smell of home cooking, I watched this remarkable girl move around our space with increasing comfort. She wasn't performing happiness, but she wasn't guarding against disappointment quite as fiercely either. "This is incredible," Sarah said, taking a bite of the cornbread. "Your grandmother was a wonderful teacher." Keisha smiled, the first real unguarded smile we'd seen. "She was the best person I ever knew. I hope—" She paused, then looked directly at us. "I hope she would like you." "I hope so too," I said. "And Keisha, I think she'd be incredibly proud of who you're becoming." That night, after Keisha returned to the group home, Sarah and I sat on our couch holding hands. "She's choosing us too," Sarah said softly. "Yeah," I replied. "She is." The courtroom felt smaller than I'd expected, less formal than the TV shows make them appear. Judge Patricia Martinez had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and she smiled warmly as Keisha, Sarah, and I sat together at the table with our lawyer. 3 months had passed since our first meeting. 3 months of visits, evaluations, family therapy sessions, and gradual trust building. The state had approved our adoption petition, but this final hearing was about something more important than legal paperwork. It was about Keisha's choice. "Keisha," Judge Martinez said gently, "you understand that this is your decision too? You're old enough to have a voice in this process." Keisha sat up straighter, wearing the navy blue dress Sarah had bought for today. She'd insisted on doing her own hair, neat braids with small blue ribbons that matched her outfit. "Yes, Your Honor. Tell me about the Thompsons. How do you feel about them becoming your legal parents?" I held my breath. For all our bonding, all the progress we'd made, this was the moment of truth. Keisha was quiet for a long moment, choosing her words carefully. At first, I didn't trust them. Rich people wanted to adopt me before, but they wanted me to be grateful and quiet and perfect all the time. They wanted a charity case to make them feel good about themselves. My heart sank, but Keisha continued. "But Mr. and Mrs. Thompson are different. When I told them I don't do fake hugs, they didn't try to convince me I was wrong. When I had a bad day and didn't want to talk, they just sat with me. They don't try to replace my grandmother or pretend my life started when I met them." She paused, glancing at us. "And they listen, really listen. When I told them about wanting to be a doctor, they didn't just say, 'That's nice.' Mr. Thompson took me to his friend's medical practice to shadow for a day. Mrs. Thompson bought me books about medical school and showed me her old science textbooks." Sarah squeezed my hand under the table. "They also don't pretend everything is perfect. Mrs. Thompson told me about how sad she's been about not having babies. Mr. Thompson told me about growing up poor and feeling angry sometimes. They're honest with me, so I can be honest with them." Judge Martinez nodded encouragingly. "And how do you feel about being part of their family?" For the first time, Keisha's voice wavered slightly. "Scared, but good scared. Like when you're about to go on a roller coaster that you really want to ride, but you're nervous too." She turned to look at us directly. "I want to be their daughter, and I want them to be my parents. Real parents, not just people taking care of me." I felt tears building behind my eyes, but Keisha wasn't finished. "Your Honor, can I ask them something?" "Of course." Keisha turned in her chair to face Sarah and me fully. "I've been thinking about this for weeks. If I say yes to this, if we become a real family, I need to know you're not going to change your minds if I'm difficult sometimes. I need to know you're not going to give up on me if I have bad days, or if I miss my grandmother, or if I'm not perfect." Sarah leaned forward, her voice thick with emotion. "Keisha, families don't give up on each other. Not real families. We're going to have hard days. All families do. But we're going to have them together." I nodded. "You're not on trial with us, sweetheart. You don't have to earn your place in our family every day. You belong with us, period." Keisha studied our faces for what felt like forever, then nodded slowly. Okay, then yes, I want to be Keisha Thompson. Judge Martinez smiled broadly. Well then, let's make it official. The legal ceremony was brief. Signatures, official stamps, formal declarations. But when Judge Martinez said, "Congratulations, Thompson family," something fundamental shifted. In the universe, outside the courthouse, Maria Rodriguez hugged all three of us. "I've been waiting 3 years to see Keisha this happy," she said, wiping her eyes. "You're going to be wonderful together." As we walked toward our car, Keisha suddenly stopped. "Wait, I need to do something." She turned to Sarah first, then to me, and gave us each a real hug. Not the polite, careful hugs from our early visits, but the kind of hug that said, "You're mine and I'm yours. Can I call you Mom and Dad now?" she asked, her voice small but hopeful. Sarah was crying openly now. Nothing would make us happier. "Okay, Dad," she said, trying out the word like she was tasting something sweet. "Mom, let's go home." As we drove through Manhattan toward our apartment, toward home, I caught Keisha's eye in the rearview mirror. "Any regrets?" I asked teasingly. She grinned, and it was like the sun coming out. "Just one." "What's that?" I should have said yes sooner. That evening we celebrated with takeout from Keisha's favorite Chinese restaurant, eaten on the floor of our living room while watching old Disney movies. Simple, perfect, and ours. Before bed, Keisha appeared in our bedroom doorway, holding a small wrapped package. "I made this for you," she said shyly, handing it to Sarah. Inside was a hand-drawn card with 3 stick figures holding hands in front of a tall building. Happy Family Day was written in careful cursive at the top. "It's perfect," Sarah whispered. "Just like today. Just like us," I added, and Keisha beamed. Moving day arrived on a crisp Saturday morning in October. Keisha's belongings fit into 3 cardboard boxes and a single duffel bag, a sobering reminder of how little permanence she'd had in her 12 years. "That's everything?" Sarah asked, gently as we loaded the boxes into our SUV outside the group home. "I learned not to get attached to too much stuff," Keisha said matter-of-factly, but I saw her clutch a worn teddy bear a little tighter. "Things get left behind when you move around a lot." The group home staff had gathered to say goodbye. These women had cared for dozens of kids over the years, but it was clear Keisha held a special place in their hearts. "You keep up those grades." "You hear?" said Mrs. Patterson, the house manager, giving Keisha a fierce hug. "And don't forget to write to us." "I won't forget," Keisha promised. "Thank you for everything." As we drove toward Manhattan, Keisha was unusually quiet, staring out the window at the changing neighborhoods. We crossed the bridge from Brooklyn, and the Manhattan skyline rose up before us like a promise. "Nervous?" I asked, catching her eye in the rearview mirror again. "A little. It's just, I've never had my own room before." "Not really." There was always someone else's stuff, or someone leaving, or someone new coming. She paused. "What if I don't know how to live in a family?" Sarah turned around in her seat. "None of us know how to live in this family yet, because we've never been this family before. We'll figure it out together." Back at the apartment, we carried Keisha's boxes to her room, the former nursery we'd finally been able to transform. We'd painted the walls a soft lavender, her choice, hung shelves for her books, and set up a desk by the window where she could study and look out over Central Park. "It's really mine?" she asked, standing in the doorway like she was afraid to enter. "It's really yours," I confirmed, "for as long as you want it." She stepped inside slowly, running her fingers along the new furniture, testing the bed, examining every detail. Then she sat on the window seat and looked out at the view. "I can see the whole world from here," she said softly. "That's the idea," Sarah said, sitting beside her. "We want you to see all the possibilities out there." That afternoon we had our first family crisis. Keisha had unpacked her few belongings, but her room still looked sparse compared to the abundance of everything else in our home. She'd been quiet during lunch, picking at her sandwich. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Sarah finally asked. Keisha's composure cracked. "This is too much." The room, the view, the fancy everything. I don't deserve this. Kids like me don't get families, like you. I knelt down in front of her chair. Keisha, look at me. What kind of kids deserve loving families? Good kids. Kids who haven't been in the system. Kids whose parents wanted them from the beginning. Wrong, I said firmly. All kids deserve loving families, every single one. You're not lucky we chose you. We're lucky you chose us. Sarah sat on Keisha's other side. And there's no such thing as kids like you and families like us. There's just us. Our family. The Thompson family. Keisha wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I'm scared I'm going to mess this up. We all are, Sarah admitted. But we're going to mess it up together, and then we're going to figure it out together. That's what families do. That evening, we established our first family tradition, Sunday dinner preparation. Keisha taught us her grandmother's cornbread recipe. Sarah showed her how to make her mother's apple pie, and I contributed my specialty, ordering the best takeout in the city when cooking disasters struck. This is harder than it looks, Keisha laughed as flour covered every surface of our usually pristine kitchen. Grandma made it look so easy. Your grandma had years of practice, Sarah said, helping her measure ingredients, and she probably made plenty of messes too when she was learning. As we worked together, I watched my daughter, our daughter, slowly relax into belonging. She gave Sarah cooking tips, teased me about my lack of culinary skills, and filled our home with laughter that had been missing for too long. Before bed, Keisha knocked on our bedroom door. Can I ask you guys something? Always, I said. At the group home, we had to ask permission for everything. Can I just do normal kid things here? Like get a snack from the kitchen, or take a shower when I want, or stay up reading if I can't. Sleep? Sarah's eyes filled with tears again, something that had been happening a lot lately, but happy tears now. Keisha, this is your home. You don't need permission to live in your own home. But there should be some rules, right? All families have rules. I thought about it. How about this? You don't need permission for normal daily things, but we talk to each other about the big stuff. And if you're going somewhere or doing something new, we discuss it first, not because we don't trust you, but because we care about you and want to know you're safe. She nodded thoughtfully. That sounds fair. And can I tell you guys about my dreams? The ones about becoming a doctor? We want to hear about all your dreams, Sarah said. Every single one. Later that night, Sarah and I stood in Keisha's doorway, watching her sleep in her own bed, in her own room, in our home. A nightlight cast gentle shadows on her face, and she was holding her grandmother's teddy bear close. She's home, Sarah whispered. We all are, I replied. And for the first time in years, I felt truly, completely whole. The empty room that had haunted us for so long was finally filled, not just with furniture and belongings, but with the presence of the child we'd been waiting for without even knowing it. The first month of being a family was like learning a new language, full of miscommunications, small victories, and moments of unexpected grace. We were all trying to figure out how to be the Thompsons. Keisha's first day at her new private school was a disaster that turned into a triumph. I'd worried about the transition from public school in Brooklyn to Manhattan Prep Academy, but I'd underestimated my daughter's resilience. How was school? Sarah asked when we picked her up that afternoon. Interesting, Keisha said diplomatically, but I could see something had happened. It wasn't until bedtime that the whole story came out. She'd been sitting alone at lunch when a group of girls approached her. They wanted to know if I was the charity case their parents had been talking about. Keisha told us, her voice steady but her eyes hurt. They said their parents heard that some rich family had adopted a kid from foster care for the tax breaks. My blood boiled, but before I could speak, Keisha continued. So I told them yes, I was adopted, but their parents were wrong about the tax breaks. I said my dad already has plenty of money, so he adopted me for the much better benefit, having a daughter who's smarter than all their kids combined. Sarah and I exchanged glances, trying not to smile. What happened then? Sarah asked. Madison. Chen, she's in my advanced math class, started laughing. She said anyone who could shut down Ashley Peterson like that was definitely someone she wanted to be friends with. Keisha grinned. Turns out Madison's adopted too. Her parents adopted her from China when she was a baby. So, you made a friend? Yeah. And Ashley Peterson isn't speaking to me, which Madison says is actually a gift to the entire 7th grade. These were the moments when I marveled at Keisha's strength. She'd learned to defend herself with intelligence and humor, to find allies among potential adversaries, and to turn painful situations into opportunities for connection. But not every day was easy. 2 weeks into October, I came home to find Keisha and Sarah having what Sarah later called our first real mother-daughter fight. I don't need you to check my homework, Keisha was saying, her voice raised in frustration. I've been doing fine on my own for years. You're not on your own anymore, Sarah replied, her own voice strained. I'm your mother now, and part of being a mother is helping with school and knowing what's going on in your life. You're not my real mother. Keisha shot back, and I saw both of them freeze at the words. Sarah's face crumpled, and Keisha immediately looked horrified at what she'd said. I didn't mean that, Keisha whispered. Mom, I didn't mean that. I stepped into the room. What's really going on here? Through tears, the real issue came out. Keisha had failed a science quiz, her first failed grade ever, and she was terrified we'd be disappointed in her, that we'd think we'd made a mistake in adopting her. So when Mom asked to see my homework, I panicked, Keisha explained. I thought if she saw I wasn't perfect at everything, she might change her mind about wanting me. Sarah pulled Keisha into a hug. Oh, sweetheart, you think we expect you to be perfect? Don't you? Keisha, I said, sitting on the floor in front of them. When I was your age, I failed plenty of tests. I got in trouble. I made mistakes. I disappointed people. That's called being human. But you're successful now. You're rich and important. I'm successful because I learned from my mistakes, not because I never made them. And you know what makes me feel most successful? Being your dad. Not my companies, not my money. Being your dad. Sarah wiped Keisha's tears with her thumbs. And you never have to earn your place in this family. You belong here because we love you, not because of your grades or your achievements. Those are wonderful, but they're not why we're proud of you. Why are you proud of me then? Because you're kind to younger kids at school, Sarah said. Because you help elderly neighbors carry their groceries. Because you defend yourself with wit instead of cruelty. Because you're brave enough to trust us even though you've been hurt before. That night marked a turning point. Keisha started coming to us with problems instead of trying to handle everything alone. She showed us her homework, good and bad. She told us about friendship drama, teacher conflicts, and the million small worries that fill a 7th grader's mind. This is what normal families do, she said one evening as we all sat around the kitchen table, helping her with a particularly challenging algebra problem. They do homework together. Is that good or bad? I asked. She smiled. Really, really good. By Halloween, we'd found our rhythm. Keisha convinced us to dress up as a family. She was a doctor, naturally. Sarah was a nurse, and I was somehow talked into being a patient with a ridiculous number of bandages. This is embarrassing, I muttered as we walked through Central Park, where Keisha had insisted we go trick-or-treating. This is perfect, Keisha countered, adjusting my fake arm sling. Besides, someone has to be the patient. Madison's dad is being a skeleton, so you're getting off easy. As we walked from building to building, I watched Keisha interact with other kids, include younger children who seemed left out, and politely thank every adult who complimented her costume. She was growing into herself in our family, becoming more confident, more secure, more herself. Best Halloween ever, she declared as we headed home with a bag full of candy and hearts full of belonging. Best family ever, Sarah and I said in unison, making Keisha laugh so hard she nearly dropped her candy bag. December brought our first major test as a family. Keisha had been with us for 2 months, and just when we thought we'd figured everything out, she started having nightmares. The first time I heard her crying at 2 a.m., I found her sitting on her bedroom floor, clutching her grandmother's teddy bear, tears streaming down her face. I dreamed Grandma was disappointed in me, she whispered when I sat beside her. She said I forgot about her because I'm happy now. My heart broke. Keisha, Being happy in your new life doesn't mean you're forgetting your grandmother. Love doesn't work that way, but I called Sarah Mom today without thinking about it. And I laughed at Dad's terrible jokes, and I like living here. She looked up at me with eyes full of guilt. Does that make me a bad granddaughter? Sarah appeared in the doorway, having heard the conversation. Can I tell you something about your grandmother? She asked, settling on the floor with us. Keisha nodded. I never met her, but I know one thing for certain. She loved you more than anything in the world. And do you know what people who love us want most for us? What? They want us to be happy. They want us to be loved and safe and free to become everything we're meant to be. Sarah brushed a tear from Keisha's cheek. Your grandmother isn't disappointed in you for being happy. She's probably celebrating that you found a family who loves you as much as she did. You really think so? I know so, I said firmly. And you know what else? You can love us and still love her. Your heart is big enough for all of it. We started a new bedtime routine after that. Every night Keisha would tell us one memory about her grandmother, and we'd talk about how that memory connected to something in her current life. Slowly, the nightmares faded, replaced by dreams where her grandmother and her new family coexisted peacefully in her heart. January brought a different challenge. Keisha's grades, which had always been her source of pride and security, started slipping. Not dramatically, B's instead of A's, but enough to worry her. I think I'm getting stupid, she announced one evening after struggling with her English. Essay impossible, Sarah said immediately. What's really going on? It took some coaxing, but the truth came out. Keisha had been so focused on proving she deserved her new life that she'd been putting enormous pressure on herself to excel at everything. The stress was affecting her ability to concentrate. I need to be the best at everything so you won't regret adopting me, she admitted. I set down my laptop and gave her my full attention. Keisha, do you know why I fell in love with your mother? She looked puzzled by the apparent change of subject. Because she's beautiful and smart? Those things are true, but that's not why. I fell in love with her because she makes terrible puns that make me laugh anyway. Because she cries at dog videos. Because she burns toast but makes the world's best scrambled eggs. Because she's perfectly, imperfectly human. Sarah smiled and took over. And we didn't fall in love with your report card, sweetheart. We fell in love with you. The girl who volunteers with little kids. Who stands up to bullies with clever comebacks. Who makes sure everyone feels included. Who asks thoughtful questions about everything. Your grades are important because education is important for your dreams, I added. But they're not why. We love you. We love you because you're Keisha. That conversation led to another family tradition. Perfectly imperfect moments. Every week, we'd each share something we'd done that wasn't perfect. Something we'd learned from, or something we'd failed at. It helped normalize the idea that growth comes from struggle, not from constant success. February brought an unexpected gift. My mother flew in from Detroit to meet her granddaughter for the first time. I'm nervous, Keisha confided as we waited at the airport. What if she doesn't like me? Impossible, I said, echoing Sarah's earlier words. But you know what? She's nervous too. She's never been a grandmother before. When my mother emerged from the terminal, she was exactly as I'd described her to Keisha. Warm, direct, and impossible not to love. She took one look at Keisha and opened her arms. There's my grandbaby, she said, and Keisha melted into the hug like she'd been waiting for it her whole life. Over the weekend, I watched 3 generations of Thompson women bond over cooking lessons, nail painting, and stories about my embarrassing childhood. Your daddy was just as stubborn as you are, my mother told Keisha as they made cookies together. Used to argue with his teachers when he thought they were wrong. Did he get in trouble? Keisha asked, delighted by this glimpse into my past. Oh, honey, your daddy was in trouble so much they should have named a detention hall after him. But you know what? He was usually right. Keisha beamed. I get in trouble for arguing with teachers too. Good, my mother said firmly. Don't let anybody dim your light, baby girl. This world needs smart girls who speak up. When it was time for my mother to leave, Keisha cried real tears. Will you come back soon, Grandma? She asked, the title coming naturally. Try and keep me away. my mother replied, holding her tight. You're stuck with me now, grandbaby. That night, Keisha crawled into bed between Sarah and me, something she only did when she was feeling particularly vulnerable or happy. I have 2 grandmas now, she said wonderfully. One in heaven and one in Detroit. You sure do, Sarah said, kissing the top of her head. And they both love me just because I exist. That's exactly right, I confirmed. As winter turned to spring, I realized we'd weathered our first season as a family. We'd faced nightmares and academic pressure, met extended family and established traditions. We'd learned that love isn't about perfection, it's about showing up for each other, especially when things get hard. Dad, Keisha said one evening, as we worked on homework together. Yeah, I think I'm ready. Ready for what? Ready to stop waiting for something to go wrong, ready to just be happy. I looked at my daughter, confident, secure, blooming into the remarkable young woman she was meant to be, and felt a surge of pride so strong it took my breath away. I think that's the best idea you've ever had, I said, and for the first time since I'd known her, Keisha Thompson looked completely, utterly at peace. Spring brought new growth in more ways than one. Keisha had been part of our family for 6 months, and the transformation was remarkable, not just in her, but in all of us. I want to throw a party, she announced one April morning over breakfast. Sarah and I exchanged glances. Keisha wasn't typically the party-throwing type. What kind of party? Sarah asked. A family party, to celebrate 6 months of being the Thompsons. She paused, suddenly uncertain. Is that weird? Do families celebrate stuff like that? Our family does whatever feels right to us, I said. And celebrating 6 months of being together feels perfect. The party was small, but meaningful. Madison and her parents came, along with Maria Rodriguez, some of Keisha's teachers, and the staff from the community center, where she still volunteered. My mother flew in from Detroit, and Sarah's parents drove up from Philadelphia. I want to make a speech, Keisha said before we ate, standing up at our dining room table that had been extended to seat everyone. 6 months ago, I was scared to hope for a family, she began, her voice clear and strong. I thought families were something that happened to other kids, not kids like me. But I learned that families aren't about being perfect or having the same DNA or starting together from the beginning. She looked directly at Sarah and me. Families are about choosing each other every day, about showing up when things are hard, about celebrating each other's victories and holding each other through defeats. Her voice got softer. Mom and Dad didn't just give me a home. They gave me permission to dream bigger, to take up space, to believe I deserve good things. They taught me that love isn't something you have to earn. It's something you get to share. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. So thank you, she continued, for choosing me, for being patient while I learned how to be part of a family, for loving me not despite my story, but because of who that story made me. She raised her glass of sparkling cider. To the Thompson family, the best thing that ever happened to me. The summer brought our first family vacation, 2 weeks in California visiting Sarah's parents, followed by a week at a beach house in the Hamptons. I've never seen the Pacific Ocean, Keisha said as we planned the trip. I've never been on a plane. I've never stayed in a hotel. First times are the best, Sarah said. We get to experience it all through your eyes. The vacation was a revelation. Away from the pressures of school and the structured routine of home, we saw new sides of each other. Keisha was adventurous, trying surfing lessons and insisting we hiked to the top of every viewpoint. Sarah was playful, building elaborate sandcastles and starting water fights. And I discovered I actually enjoyed being still, sitting on the beach reading while my wife and daughter collected shells and chased waves. This is what happiness feels like, Keisha said one evening as we watched the sunset from our beach house deck. I used to think happiness was just the absence of bad things happening, but it's not. It's this feeling of belonging somewhere, of being exactly where you're supposed to be. Where do you feel like you're supposed to be? Sarah asked. Keisha didn't hesitate. With you guys, wherever we are, as long as we're together. But the most significant moment of our summer came in an unexpected way. We were at a restaurant in Santa Barbara when Keisha excused herself to use the restroom. When she came back, she was walking with a woman and a little boy who couldn't have been more than 4. "Mom, Dad, this is Mrs. Garcia and her son Miguel," Keisha said. Miguel was crying in the bathroom because he lost his toy car and his mom doesn't speak much English. I looked at the woman, who was clearly grateful, but embarrassed. Miguel clutched a small red car and smiled shyly at Keisha. "I told them we'd help them find the restaurants lost and found," Keisha continued in the matter-of-fact way she approached helping others. As we helped reunite Miguel with his favorite toy, which had rolled under a table, I watched Keisha translate between English and her basic Spanish, comfort a scared child, and include a family who might have otherwise felt isolated. "You did good, kiddo," I told her later. "Grandma always said we help when we can," she replied simply. "Besides, I know what it feels like to be scared and need someone to care." That moment crystallized something I'd been realizing all summer. Keisha wasn't just healing from her past experiences. She was using them as a source of strength and compassion. Her difficult journey had created a young woman of remarkable empathy and resilience. As we prepared to start 8th grade in the fall, Keisha made an announcement that surprised us. "I want to invite some kids from the group home to my birthday party," she said. "I know it might be awkward, mixing my old life with my new life, but those kids need to see that good things can happen. They need to see that families like ours exist." Sarah and I looked at each other, bursting with pride. "That's a beautiful idea," Sarah said. "How can we make it special for them?" Keisha's birthday party became a celebration that bridged 2 worlds. Kids from Manhattan Prep mingled with kids from Brooklyn group homes. Madison's parents connected with other adoptive families. The community center staff saw Keisha in her new context, and our new friends got a glimpse of where she'd come from. "This is my family," Keisha said to everyone, gesturing to Sarah and me. "But these are my people too. All of you made me who I am." Watching her navigate between different groups, making sure everyone felt included, translating between different social contexts with grace and maturity, I realized our little girl was becoming an extraordinary young woman. "She's going to change the world," Sarah whispered to me as we watched Keisha organize a game that included kids of all ages and backgrounds. "She already is," I replied, "one person at a time." That night, as we cleaned up after the party, Keisha flopped onto our couch with a satisfied sigh. "Best birthday ever," she declared. "Even better than the one where you got a family." Sarah teased. Keisha considered this seriously. "That was the day my new life started, but today felt like the day I figured out how to put all the pieces of my life together into one whole person." She was right. Keisha Thompson wasn't trying to forget Keisha Williams anymore. She was honoring both parts of her story, using her experiences to build bridges and create connections. Our daughter was home, in every sense of the word, not just in our family, but in her own skin. "Dad, are you crying?" Keisha asked, looking up from her acceptance letter to the prestigious summer science program at Columbia University. "Maybe," I admitted, wiping my eyes. "I'm just proud of you." "It's just a summer program," she said, but I could see she was proud too. "It's not just anything," Sarah corrected, joining us in the kitchen where we'd been making breakfast. "This program accepts 30 students from the entire Northeast region, and you're the youngest person they've ever admitted." It had been a year and a half since adoption day, and Keisha continued to amaze us. Not just with her academic achievements, though those were impressive, but with the young woman she was becoming. At 13, she was confident without being arrogant, ambitious without being ruthless, and wise beyond her years without losing her childhood wonder. She still volunteered at the community center every Saturday, now mentoring other foster kids who were hoping for adoption. She'd started a tutoring program at school for kids who were struggling academically, and she'd become something I never expected, one of my closest friends. "Can I tell you guys something?" she said, folding the acceptance letter carefully. "Always," Sarah and I said simultaneously, which made her grin. "Sometimes I think about what would have happened if you hadn't adopted me. If I'd aged out of the system, or ended up with a family that didn't understand me, or just never found you. My chest tightened. Keisha. No, let me finish. I think about it because it makes me grateful, not sad. I think about all the kids who are still waiting, and I want to do something about it. She paused, organizing her thoughts the way she always did when something was important to her. I want to be a doctor, but not just any doctor. I want to specialize in pediatrics, and I want to work with kids in the system. Kids who've been through trauma, who need someone who understands what it's like to feel unwanted. Sarah reached across the table and took Keisha's hand. That's beautiful, sweetheart. And, Keisha continued, I want us to adopt again. Sarah, and I froze. I know it's a big decision, and I know it would change our family. But Dad, you always said our hearts were big enough for all the love we could find, and there are so many kids who need what we have. I looked at my daughter, this remarkable girl who'd transformed our lives in ways we never could have imagined, and felt my heart expand even further. What made you think about this? I asked. There's a boy at the community center. Kevin. He's 10, and he's been in care for 2 years. He reminds me of myself before I met you. Smart, scared, trying to be invisible so no one gets disappointed in him. She leaned forward earnestly. I keep thinking about what would have happened if you'd walked away when I was difficult, or if you'd decided one kid was enough. We never would have walked away, Sarah said softly. I know that now. But Kevin doesn't know that about anyone yet. And there are so many Kevins. That conversation started a family discussion that lasted months. We talked to therapists about the impact on our family dynamic. We consulted with Maria Rodriguez about the process of adopting again. We had long conversations with Keisha about what it would mean to be a big sister, to share our attention and resources. Are you sure you want this? I asked her one evening as we walked through Central Park. Really sure? Because once we start this process, we're all in. Keisha stopped walking and looked at me seriously. Dad, do you remember what you said to me the first day we met? When I asked what you wanted from me? I said we wanted to get to know you and support your dreams. And you said maybe we wanted to be a family. Maybe. She smiled. Well, now I know we're definitely a family. And families grow. They make room for more love, more people, more possibilities. 6 months later, we were back in family court with Judge Martinez, this time with Kevin Rodriguez, a brilliant, wary 10-year-old who loved astronomy and had been convinced he was too old for anyone to want. Kevin, Judge Martinez said gently, tell me about the Thompson family. Kevin glanced at us nervously, then at Keisha, who nodded encouragingly. They're different, he said quietly. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson don't try to make me happy all the time. They just let me be myself. And Keisha, she gets it. She knows what it's like. What's it like? The judge asked. Being scared that if you mess up, they'll send you back. Being afraid to want things too much. But Keisha told me something that helped. What did she tell you? Kevin looked directly at Keisha. She said families aren't perfect, but real families stick together through the imperfect parts. She said I don't have to earn my place every day. I just have to show up as myself. Judge Martinez smiled. And do you want to be part of the Thompson family? Yes, ma'am, I really do. The second time around, the celebration felt different, not less meaningful, but more confident. We knew how to do this now. We knew that love multiplies rather than divides, that families stretch to accommodate whoever needs to belong. That evening, as we sat around our dinner table, now expanded to seat 5, I looked at my family. Sarah, whose maternal instincts had bloomed beyond what either of us had imagined. Keisha, who'd become not just our daughter but Kevin's fierce protector and advocate. Kevin, still cautious but beginning to believe in permanent love. And me, a man who'd thought success was measured in dollars and deals, now understanding that the only wealth that matters is the love we create and share. Dad? Keisha said, interrupting my reverie. Yeah? Thank you. For what? For taking a chance on a scared 12-year-old girl who didn't know how to trust. For showing me what family really means. For proving that some adults keep their promises. She paused, glancing at Kevin, who was still getting used to family dinners but was smiling more each day, and for teaching me that the best way to heal from a hard beginning is to make sure other kids get better beginnings. I reached across the table and took both my children's hands, Sarah completing the circle by taking Kevin's other hand and mine. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with emotion, "for choosing us, for making us a family, for showing us that the greatest success isn't what you achieve, it's who you become and who you help along the way." As we sat there, hands linked, around our table, with the New York skyline twinkling beyond our windows, I realized that the scared, empty man who'd stood in a yellow nursery 2 years ago no longer existed. In his place was someone I liked much better, a father, a husband, a man whose life was measured not in quarterly profits but in bedtime stories, homework help, family dinners, and the immeasurable joy of watching his children discover who they were meant to be. "So," Sarah said, breaking the moment with a grin, "who wants dessert?" "Me," Kevin said enthusiastically, the first time he'd spoken up without being asked directly. "Me too," Keisha added, "but only if Dad promises not to tell any more of his terrible jokes." "Hey, my jokes are excellent," I protested. "Dad," Keisha said, rolling her eyes in the way only a teenage daughter can, "your jokes are many things, but excellent isn't one of them." As our laughter filled the apartment, mixing with the sounds of a city full of millions of people, I knew that somewhere out there, other families were being formed, other children were finding their way home, other hearts were learning to stretch, big enough to hold all the love they'd never dared to dream possible. The Thompson family had come full circle, from a couple longing for a child, to parents learning to love, to a family committed to making sure no child has to wait as long as Keisha did to find where they belong. And this, I realized, was just the beginning of our story.